Here are the episodes that will simply make you hate Peter Griffin, starting with Turban Cowboy. Yeah, we're starting off controversially. This is the episode that one, let's just say that insensitive meme comes from. This probably won't make you hate Peter Griffin, just the whole Family Guy writing staff, maybe. But let's move on to the actual episode. Peter Griffin's latest hobby, skydiving, goes about as well as you'd expect, meaning he ends up in the hospital.
Oh, ground. Damn it!
While he's laying there, probably thinking about his next disaster, he meets Mahmoud, a guy who seems perfectly normal.
I am Mahmoud.
I'm Peter, and I never seen a hat like that before, so I'm very scared of it.
Which, of course, means he's not. Peter's terrible radar for trouble kicks into high gear, and before long, they're best friends.
I am glad you are enjoying yourself. Would you like some of my meat fushnush?
Peter, being Peter, is thrilled with his new buddy, completely ignoring the fact that Mahmoud's behavior raises enough red flags to start a parade. Peter even decides to become a Muslim.
Well, Lois, I happen to be a Muslim now, which means I'll be spending a lot of my time in mostly empty cafes, watching soccer on an 8-inch black and white TV.
Lois and Peter's crew smell something fishy from a mile away, but Peter just shrugs it off.
You know he knew 19 guys who died on 9/11? I mean, what are the odds?
Because, you know, what's a little suspicious activity between friends?
Look, I'm gonna call Mahmoud right now on this cell phone he gave me. He'll tell you.
Next thing you know, Mahmoud ropes Peter into a harmless little task, driving a van full of explosives to the Quahog Bridge. You can practically hear the alarm bells, but Peter? Nah, he's too busy enjoying the ride to notice. He's just been cast in the wrong episode of 24. It's only when he's in the driver's seat, literally on the way to blow up a bridge, that it finally clicks. Wait, maybe this isn't a great idea.
Man, I never thought it would end like this.
Why? What did you imagine?
Well, basically the same thing, only Nathan Lane.
At that point, it's peak Peter, completely oblivious until the damage is already done.
America must pay for its sins!
Even though the police manages to catch the terrorists before the bridge is over, Peter decides to make one more phone call before the gang goes out for a drink to celebrate. The bridge goes up in flames, the town's in a meltdown, and Peter is left scratching his head, baffled by how things always go off the rails when he's around. Okay, but you can't say that Peter wasn't actually aware that he was part of a terrorist plot, sure. But in the next episode, he chooses to go to the dark side on his own. We're talking about The Tan Aquatic with Steve Zissou. Peter has always been rough around the edges, let's say. Hey, that's archetype. He's the patriarch of a dysfunctional family, but in this episode, he goes full-blown villain. When Chris gets bullied by a 13-year-old named Kyle, Peter decides to handle it like any mature adult.
Kyle beat me up.
You let that little punk beat you up?
By tracking down the kid and beating him up. Classic Peter.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, what's going on?
Is something wrong?
No. Everything's cool right now.
And here's where it gets even wilder. Kyle, instead of being, you know, horrified, just brushes it off and tells Peter that bullying is actually fun.
You don't have to apologize. I would have done the same thing. I mean, bullying makes you feel pretty cool.
Yeah, this kid's got issues. So what does Peter do? Naturally, he dives headfirst into his new role as head bully of Quahog. You see, he remembers being bullied by this kid Randy Fulcher back in school, and now he wants to become the bully, so he domesticates his wife.
Cook much?
Then farts into Meg's face.
Dad! Get away from me!
And even uses Joel like a marionette.
Hey, on the hill was a lonely goat herd.
Poor Joe, this is far from the worst thing Peter would do to you. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. When Lois tells him he should stop bullying random people, he takes the advice completely wrong.
You're right, Lois. I shouldn't be bullying the people I care about. I should be bullying Randy Fulcher.
It doesn't take long for him to find Randy Fulcher. The only problem is, he's suffering from the early stages of the Stephen Hawking disease.
Yeah, I have MS.
Oh, you hear that, Chris? This guy's got a monkey scrotum and he's bragging about it.
But don't worry, it doesn't take long for someone to knock Peter down a peg. Literally. Chris, of all people, steps up and beats his dad to a pulp to show him what a real bully feels like. And just like that, Peter's reign of terror is over. By the end of the episode, Peter's left with a bruised ego and a long list of people he's managed to take off. Well, if Peter's bullying spree didn't make you hate him, don't worry. He's about to pull a move so wild, even the Joker wouldn't raise an eyebrow. Let's look at Hot Shots. In this episode, Peter decides to tackle the important issue. No, not bats in the Griffin family home attacking Meg. No one cares about that. We're talking about Peter tackling the issue of vaccines. And by tackle, I mean he blows up a hospital by the end of the episode. Here I go again, getting ahead of myself. Let's backtrack. It all starts when a bat with a gun gets loose in the house. Don't ask, Pete's idea. And our favorite Homer Simpson knockoff clumsy attempts to get rid of it, leading to Stewie getting injured. While at the hospital, the doctor suggests Stewie get his vaccines, but Lois, in true internet misinformation fashion, gets cold feet after reading about the supposed dangers of vaccinations online.
We were gonna get
get Stewie vaccinated, but now after our research, we're definitely not.
Peter, because he's Peter, jumps on the bandwagon with her and decides that not vaccinating Stewie is the way to go. Cue the anti-vaccination rally where Peter becomes the face of the movement, to absolutely no one's surprise.
Vaccinations cause autism, paralysis, and even death.
But things get serious fast. Thanks to Peter's antics, a measles outbreak spreads through Stewie's daycare and the entire town gets quarantined. And what does Peter do when he realizes he might have made a mistake?
We've got to get to the hospital and get Stewie vaccinated.
Yeah, it might be a little too late for that. I kind of destroyed all the vaccines in town.
Well, instead of rethinking his life choices, he pulls a Dark Knight move and blows up the entire supply of vaccines. Yup, he levels an entire hospital in his quest to save Stewie because, of course, that's the logical next step. The best part, Peter ends up getting sick himself and panics because, guess what? There's no vaccines left to save him. Enter Sean Penn.
Sean Penn? What are you doing here?
I'm bringing vaccines into your quarantine town.
He's there to play the hero while Peter's left to reflect on his minor mistake. Oh, and in true Family Guy fashion, they casually mention that around 150 people died in the explosion.
Well, I'm just happy that Stewie is healthy, and only 150 people died, but not anyone we knew personally.
Peter's stubbornness and recklessness here are on full display, and let's be real, this is one of those episodes where you're left wondering how anyone puts up with this guy. I mean, he really stinks, and that's best illustrated in Meg Stinks. Peter is a lot of things. Responsible parent, though, not one of them. For the first 12 seasons and 18 episodes, there were dozens, if not hundreds of examples of this, but in Meg Stinks, he really hits a new low. On a road trip with Meg to Green Mountain College for her big interview, Peter decides it's the perfect time to drop some truth bombs on his daughter. And by truth bombs, I mean telling her that the only reason he has a family is because...
I was dating your mother. I don't like the way condoms feel. Next thing you know, I got a mortgage, a kid, and a crappy job at a toy factory.
Ugh, that's Peter for you. A man that always finds the perfect thing to say at any given moment. But saying to Meg that she was a mistake somehow makes her realize why her father has resented her all these years.
I don't hate you, Meg. You're my kid.
And that makes things good, I guess. God, this is a weird show. Instead of taking his daughter to visit her first choice college, Peter takes her out drinking and partying, where he apparently takes off his wedding ring and hits on girls his daughter's age.
We stayed up all night partying. By the way, if a girl named Rachel calls, it's a wrong number, but do tell me that she called.
This creates a bond between the father and daughter. A bond worse than George Lazenby, you can say. Oh man, we're not even at the middle point of the video, and I'm already running out of material. Back to the episode. Going out partying and watching movies is all great, but you know what's a better way to work on a relationship with your daughter? Taking her out of school and paying for her piercings. Oh, and robbing a bank together. I mean, you can encourage her to focus on her future, give her some sage advice, but nope. Robbing a bank is much cooler. At least that's what Peter Griffin thinks. Back home, Lois tries to knock some sense into Meg, warning her that Peter could seriously wreck her future if she keeps following him around like this. And let's face it, Lois is right. The only thing Peter's great at in this episode is showing just how terrible he can be as a dad. He messes up Meg's chance at college and also shows her how to destroy her own life. If Peter's bad decisions don't already make you cringe, my god, this episode will definitely get the job done. And speaking of God and his interventions, let's move on to If I'm Dying, I'm Lying.
And if you're settling in to watch Gumble to Gumble, you're out of luck. That show has been canceled.
When his favorite TV show, Gumble to Gumble, gets canceled, Peter doesn't just shrug it off like a normal person. Nope, he cooks up an insane scheme and takes Chris to be a grant a dream foundation kid, only so he can ask for the show to go back on the air.
My son Chris is dying. Holy crap, no! Oh my god! That was the lie.
Of course, he can't just lie about his kid having leukemia like a normal person. No, he claims that Chris is dying from a totally made-up disease.
He's got a very rare disease called tumor syphilis.
Sure. Tumor-syphilicidosis. Pretty legit and convincing name for a disease, if you ask me. What's worse is that Peter fakes Chris's symptoms by sticking pepperoni slices all over his chest as extra nipples. Seriously, how does this guy come up with this stuff? And crazy enough, the two succeed.
Well, congratulations. Gumble to Gumble is back on the air.
It's shameless, it's ridiculous, it's classic Peter, but of course things spiral out of control. Peter doesn't just fool some people, he convinces the entire town he has magical healing powers.
It's him! It's Peter Griffin, the miracle healer of Quahog! Oh, heal me, oh great one!
He starts claiming he's a deity, and somehow the people of Quahog actually buy it. But there's one problem. You can't mess with God and get away with it. Furious with Peter's nonsense, God rains down plagues on the Griffin family. Frogs, locusts, the whole deal. And just when you think it can't get any worse, Chris is almost crushed by a giant golden statue of Peter. Because that's totally normal, right? In the end, Peter has to admit he's not a god. Shocking, I know, to stop the madness. After...
Sir, we think the Griffin guy gets it.
Good, good. Peggy, turn off the plagues, please.
But of course, he almost blows it again by claiming he is God, right? Before we move on to the next episode, here's some simple math for you. Peter Griffin plus a gun equals a disaster. We have evidence for it. Exhibit A, shot in the dark. Okay, sorry. I have to transition from one episode to another. After the family's couch is stolen...
It's gone!
What? What's gone?
A drinking couch!
Correction, the family's drinking couch, Peter decides the logical response is to arm his buddies and form a neighborhood watch. Because obviously, nothing says let's find a missing couch like handing out firearms to your friends. It doesn't take long for things to go horribly wrong. One night, Peter spots what he thinks is a shady figure sneaking into Cleveland's house. So naturally, he pulls the trigger without a second thought. Turns out it's Cleveland Jr. just trying to sneak back home like any normal teenager. Peter's response, shoot first, realize you just shot your best friend's son later. This spirals into a massive scandal with Peter being accused of a hate crime.
You wouldn't have fired that gun if he was white.
That's not true. I'll shoot anybody.
Things go even worse when Cleveland goes on TV and says Peter is, in fact, a racist.
My family and I believe this shooting was a hate crime.
Mr. Griffin, of course, claims otherwise.
I'm not a racist. It's well documented that my dream three-way is Esapatha Murkison and CCH Pounder.
That's how you settle racial tensions, kids. And when Peter tries to patch things up, he somehow manages to set Cleveland's house on fire. Yep, if there's one thing Peter knows how to do, it's make everything infinitely worse. The courtroom scenes are even crazier, with Peter's lawyer trying to make Cleveland Jr. look like a thug just because he listened to music the night Peter shot him.
Mr. Brown, you testify that you were listening to music at the time of the shooting.
That's right.
It's so ridiculous that even Peter can't help but realize how wrong things have gone. Cleveland and Peter eventually make peace, but not before Cleveland Jr. gives Peter a final, half-joking threat.
Mr. Griffin?
Yeah?
Just so you know, I'm gonna be coming for your ass.
In the end, Peter dodged a bullet, well, sort of, but Meg couldn't manage to do so metaphorically in Perfect Castaway. After a fishing trip turns into a survival nightmare thanks to a hurricane and our old pal Death comes to say hi,
Here's to fish.
Hey, could I have one of those?
the guys are left drifting on a raft made out of Quagmire's dolls, because...
It's lucky you packed so many blow-up dolls,
Of course. With no food in sight, desperation sets in. But Peter? He's not worried. He's munching. At first, the rest of the guys have no idea what he's eating. He's even playing dumb, saying he's not eating anything.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Give me that!
That's right. While everyone else is starving, Peter decides Joe's paraplegic legs are fair game for snacking. It only takes guys a couple of seconds to figure out that Peter Griffin, their old buddy, has been munching on Joe's legs. This is dark, even for Peter. The fact that Joe doesn't feel pain due to his paralysis doesn't make Peter's actions any less horrifying or less selfish.
Yeah, see, now this is why I didn't say anything. I knew you were gonna get like this.
Sharing is caring, right? Well, Peter cares, mostly. Scratch that. He cares only about himself, so he literally leaves his closest friends hungry. But karma comes for Peter when he's eventually rescued, only to find out that in his absence, Lois has married Brian.
Peter, you're alive!
Brian?
Peter returns home crushed, having to deal with the fact that his wife moved on while he was stuck on an island eating his friend's legs.
Peter, remember, we thought you were dead. I needed help and Brian was there.
The episode ends with Lois going back to Peter, but not before making it clear that she was this close to actually starting a new life with Brian.
And to think, Brian, I was like a day away from having sex with you.
Let me tell you, Peter and Lois are definitely meant for each other. If you like this video, make sure to check out some of our other videos. I'm sure you want to know how Stewie gave birth to his and Brian's child, right? Click here and watch our video about the Family Guy's trippiest episodes.